Jumped the gun there, so apologies for that, but we'll try to get things going. Good afternoon. WealthSouth is excited to continue its long-standing partnership with Commerce Lexington in support of this important series. We believe that sound, well-crafted public policy is a key driver of both economic opportunity and community advancement, and we're excited to learn more from today's panel. We wanted to share some news about WealthSouth. We recently moved to our new permanent location on East Main Street. We're actually right across the street from Commerce Lexington. And Bob has assured me the fact that he announced his retirement right after we moved across the street from him was purely coincidental. So we look forward to strengthening our service to the region through trusted wealth management and commercial banking. So thank you for having us.
Good afternoon. I am Nick Nicholson with Stalking and Ogden, but more importantly, I'm the chair of the board this year for Commerce Lexington. I've been told I'm supposed to stick to the script, and so they put me at the podium as opposed to the chair. I'm going to do everything I can. Everyone who knows me knows that that is an impossible task. But our speakers here today represent the very best and the highest leadership in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. We are honored to be joined by leadership from both the Senate and the House in order to share the vision of this General Assembly for Kentucky's future. And as the branch most directly accountable to the citizens and to making sure the ability to enact sound policy and enact laws, the legislative branch holds unparalleled influence to shape the Commonwealth's policies and priorities. And the speakers today hold great influence on that unparalleled influence. Joining us today, if you all would like to come up, are the distinguished leaders from both legislative chambers: Senate President Robert Stivers of Clay County, Senator Amanda Mays Bledsoe of Fayette County, who also serves as the Vice Chair of the Appropriations and Revenue Committee. From the House, we welcome, Speaker Pro Tem David Meade of Lincoln County, and Representative Josh Bray of Rockcastle County, also the Vice Chair of the Appropriations and Revenue Committee for the House. Now, we're going to start off kind of moderating a couple questions with regards to kind of the main topics and policies that Commerce Lexington has kind of focused on this past year. But we're also going to open it up for a Q&A from any audience questions. In order to kind of type out your questions, we're also using Slido as always. The website is www.slido.com, and just type that in and use the code RECAP, and just go ahead and start typing your questions, and Bob is going to kind of go through those at the end. Now, thank you all very much for joining us to kind of recap the 2026 legislative session. Having served in Brandon's current role, previously as the Public Policy Council Chair, and now as Board Chair, and as my job continues to turn more and more towards Frankfurt, it seems these days, I know how important that policy truly is in shaping Kentucky and Commerce Lexington's kind of goals, and also ensuring that this kind of business community is able to thrive. And so I'm going to kick things off with leadership. President Stivers and Speaker Pro Tem Meade, what did you all feel were the kind of majority's main kind of priorities going into this session, and how do you believe that the successes in addressing those policies kind of came to fruition? I hope so. Yep. Could you repeat the question?
I was trying to figure out if the mic was on.
Basically, just what do you believe that the kind of majority's main priorities were going into the session, and kind of what were the successes in kind of achieving those goals?
Well, I'm going to start at the back and work my way forward. I think the reason for success is because we have such good relationship and dialogue with our counterparts in the House. We regularly meet, generally on a bi-weekly basis, then down towards the end of the session on a weekly basis. Our goals are naturally having a good, sound fiscal budget which we have been able to do over the last 10 years, improving our bond ratings. This is not me, these are outside sources and entities, that we've improved our bond rating and our business attractiveness in the state and growing a lot of new jobs based on what we've done, dealing with the pensions, dealing with our bond ratings, dealing with our debt ratios, making sure that we have a strong budget reserve trust fund. And then that leads to probably our second component. We want a good, strong workforce, and we did a lot of good things related to education and education attainment levels. And I think we passed policies that did both this year.
Of course, the budget is our main priority, and I think we did do a good job of that. We had a lot of unknowns this year with everything coming down the federal level with Medicaid, especially, which these two working on that budget did an excellent job to get us to where we were at the end. But we had some other things that we were able to work on. We did some Medicaid reform as well. We got the housing conversation well started, and I think that we can continue on that next year. That will be a priority for us going forward. As Robert said, we did some things with education accountability. So there's a lot of things that we've looked at this year, a lot of things we got started for next year, but all in all, it was a good session, I think.
That's great. That actually kind of leads into exactly where we're going next, talking about the budget. For those of you all who don't know, we just got out of a long session. The biggest kind of topic anytime we're doing the long session is the budget. Whether it is the two-year executive branch state budget, the transportation spending plan, or the one-time spending investments. Representative Bray, with the passage of the two-year budget bills, can you kind of share the approach that you go into during the budgeting kind of process, and how do you determine kind of key investments and kind of implement priorities?
Absolutely. So last budget, we kind of took a new approach on things, and we had separated out one-time expenditures from recurring expenditures. We had two separate bills, and we had never done anything like that before. And so this budget we just passed did the same exact method, in that we treat the budget reserve trust fund as our savings account from which we make investments for projects like KPDI, which is the Economic Development Program, or additional money for transportation, or just different economic development. We put some money in for housing, just different things like that. And then within the operating budget, we really honestly try to budget to what are the needs of the Commonwealth instead of what are things that people want to see in there. And by taking this approach, what we've been able to do is budget our expenses below our revenues so that we can do one-time investments in the future. So we kind of changed the philosophy of, hey, we've got all this money, we need to spend it. We need to grow government. And actually, we've taken a good approach to restraining the growth of government. And that's allowed us to make historic investments in economic development for things that are going to generate a return on those tax dollars in the future.
And I swear I did not give them the script here on these questions, but Senator Bledsoe, we've talked a whole lot about House Bill 900 and the one-time spending bill. What are some of the projects that you are kind of most proud of, and how do you see them growing the economy in Central Kentucky?
Sure. Wow, there's no light on this and yet it works. It's very confusing. I would say, first off, that the economic development driver, I think, for this area is the airport. As you know, we're landlocked. We can't expand anywhere. We can't add new terminals and new areas where they can dock, right? So if we can't grow the airport, we really limit ourselves the ability to grow the rest of the workforce in the Central Kentucky area. So $25 million was to the airport this year, which is about half of what they need to do a massive terminal expansion. And also included an additional $4 million for the Aviation Museum of Kentucky, which, as you know, is headquartered at the airport. So moving them is critical to moving the terminal. So all these pieces kind of go together. That investment over the next 5 years, I think, will be transformative. It's one of the great areas for people, private flight as well. When you think about the number of people who come in for Keeneland or this year for Breeders' Cup, even Corning, which comes into Harrisburg, they fly their corporate jet into Lucas Airport. So having that expansion is critical. The other one would be the $20 million for the Central Kentucky Regional Industrial Park, which is Fayette, Madison, and Scott County. That's another huge investment in terms of growing the economy, growing growth. A new tax revenue, huge. I On a selfish note, I'm very excited with Children's Museum, just because that's something we've been talking about for probably 20 years, and we're trying to have an area in central Kentucky, rather than going just to Louisville, to have access to a state-of-the-art imagination center for field trips and for families, that also drives tourism. I can keep going. So to me, those are some of the big, and there was quite a bit of money actually in economic development for startups and entrepreneurship. I think about the $2 million for Space Tango, and also at the Science Technology Center. So there's some really good, exciting things that we won't see today with infrastructure, but you're going to see maybe 4 or 5 years.
There's a slight follow-up, anybody can jump in on this. How can this room, how can Commerce Lexington, how can we help you all strengthen the relationship between Central Kentucky and the General Assembly in order to make sure that we are, right in line for further economic kind of development in order to, make sure we're top of line in future budget cycles? It's an easy one, right?
Oh, I'm a big cheerleader, so the question's not with me.
So in my role, I've had over 1,000 meetings over just budget requests for operating budget and one-time expenditures. I've met with your all's group both collectively and individually. I mean, you all do a fantastic job already. I don't know how many times we've talked about housing or workforce attraction or the Central Kentucky Business Park, which we just broke ground on yesterday down in Bray. So you all already do a good job, but bringing solutions instead of just bringing problems, that is always welcome, because we know what, some of our biggest issues are. But, we need your all's expertise, because this is a pretty diverse group, and, you represent a lot of different areas of the Commonwealth's economy. So if you've got any kind of solutions, we always are happy to hear those instead of just, hey, we've got a problem here.
Works for me.
Since Amanda looked at me, I'm going to take off this. You tell them. Probably one of the first things, I agree with Josh about this, what your local issues are, but there are so many things that are not just Lexington-centric, kind of like this regional industrial park. We know about it. Actually, there's 2 parks that are going to be done out of that. It was Bray, which I think of the $20 million appropriation, about $1.5 million went to the Bray, and then the other part's going to go to the North Madison County, which is like a 800-acre purchase. One, that's not just Lexington-centric, but everybody knows that there are certain hubs and things that circulate. I'm going to sit here and look at Lisa Brin, and she just, what is that? There are issues that are beyond being centric, and the movie industry and the Creek Recent Commission, how it impacts not just this area, but partnering with other places in the state of Kentucky. We're having 2 films that are going to be recognized at the Cannes Film Festival that are coming here, and I call out Lisa because she helped us draft a lot of the legislation. That will help Lexington, but guess what? It'll help the whole state. So how do you mix and mingle the issue that is here that also impacts next week? They're going to be filming in Frankfurt. Great article in the Lane Report about how many things are coming to Somerset, Kentucky. To know how you can partner well beyond the region and partner within the state to do a lot of things. And I want to look to David Meade because he brought this. When Amanda talks about the Lexington Airport, we did what was called revenue guarantees for Louisville and Lexington to create more West Coast flights and more European flights. But we have to step back and make sure that the Lexington Airport has the physical capabilities of handling this. They're not ready, but we need to look at that 2 or 4 years down the line to see how we can expand more flights into more areas, which will give us the opportunity for businesses to grow, but also a great opportunity for tourism. And that plays back into the aviation alternative fuel system or sustainable aviation. It's basically aviation fuel that is a mix of corn or soybean, alcohol, methanol mix for airports and jets that you see in your cars. Europe is wanting this. We can be the first to market off of the West Coast by coming here to Kentucky. Think what that does for bringing opportunities for European markets coming here. So I give you that to say, don't think of just Lexington-centric or Central Kentucky-centric. Think of the state as a whole, how policies we pass help everybody, and how you partner with other places in the state.
Thank you all. So we already mentioned the Budget Reserve Trust Fund. First of all, I would like to commend you all for taking a very conservative approach with that instead of seeing that you have a large savings account and wanting to go ahead and spending that. We also know that it plays a very kind of key role in triggering kind of future tax rate decreases. How confident are you that Kentucky is on a sustainable path to keep moving that income, or the tax rate down?
I'm very confident in it. And I think that the plan that we've established is one that is very safe, very consistent. I travel quite a bit, as Robert does on some of these national committees. And as we're traveling, we're talking to a lot of these other states, and many of them are in different situations than we are. They don't have the budget reserve trust funds we have. They didn't, when the money came down from the federal government back several years ago for one-time funding, they used those things for recurring costs. We said we're not going to do that, as Josh mentioned earlier. We did it for one-time funding on things, and we beefed up our infrastructure, our water lines, our roads, all those things, and prepared ourselves for that. In doing that, and then being consistent in our budget and making sure that we limited government, we were able to build it, as far as per capita, we're the largest budget reserve trust fund in the nation. And so you're seeing Kentucky in a much different situation than a lot of these other states are, who are now going into debt and having to borrow and try to balance their budgets. And I think that what we've done, setting those triggers in place, we've done a really good job of making sure that we were safe in that. We didn't take a Kansas model. We made sure that we did our own thing. So we've gone from 6% in 2018. We started there, went to 5% the first year. Then after putting the triggers in, now we're down to 3.5%. And if we continue on the path we're on, we should be able to take it down to 3% very soon. I will say that, our hope is to get to zero, but the approach that we have taken is different than Tennessee's and Florida's and those other states that you see that have a 0% income tax. They all ended up raising sales taxes. They raised tourism taxes quite a bit. They've offset that in some way. We have not had to do that. We've been able to keep sales tax the same and not have to offset. And I think that's going to make us more competitive. I think we're getting close to that area where we're actually more competitive than Tennessee is, because we're not charging those additional taxes on things. So I think you're going to see us continue down that pathway, but I think we're on a good approach.
I'll give anyone a chance to if that wants to take the opportunity. Why is it that lowering this tax rate is so vital to the long-term economic growth of Kentucky?
If you look at the states, around us, we spend a lot of time comparing Kentucky to Tennessee and Ohio and West Virginia, or, all of our neighbors. It's because that's who we're competing with. We want to grow Kentucky's economy. And we've, like Speaker Pro Tem Meade said, we've taken a different approach. Instead of jacking up sales tax to replace our dwindling income tax, we're trying to grow the base, which, when you look at the expenses out of House Bill 900, that's exactly what this is designed to do. When we put in infrastructure, when we make investments in the Lexington airport, or when we do sustainable aviation fuel, it's with the long-term goal of looking 5-10 years down the road of, hey, we need to grow Kentucky's base, and we do that through good, sound investments and good, sound tax policy. We have to make sure that, we're competitive now, but we've got an eye towards the future. So yeah, I'm not a very patient person, and that the legislature has really humbled me in patience. Because I want things and I want them done now, but that's just not the best way to do it, especially when we're looking at tax policy.
The Senate does a good job. Patience is way of trying to teach us patience.
Let me play in on. I'm sorry, Lisa. I'm picking on you today. But we went out to the West Coast when we tried to do a recruitment tour, and you're aware of it. Several of us went. Misty Wrigley Miller, who many of y'all know. And one of the biggest things they said when you start talking about the tax rate, they were like, "What's y'all's tax rate? 3.5%. Well, what is yours? 12.2." Boy, if that doesn't make us really attractive, then you look at New York. Now you see why there's such out-migration, because these people can come here and have almost a 9% difference in their tax rate at the state level. That's why it's important for us to be competitive from that perspective, because people don't want to be taxed into basically oblivion. And that's what you're seeing, and why you're seeing mass exodus from high-tax states, which inures to the benefit of Kentucky.
And he also has admission, and Representative Meade is right on this, we don't tax groceries, we don't tax medical drugs, we don't tax a lot of professional services. That's what comes next. if we continue down this path and don't have enough growth of revenue. So if we can grow the economy with jobs and growth and not have to tax anything else to do it, that is a long-term benefit that makes us way competitive in terms of our senior living and really who makes up Kentuckians.
And I want to give a statistic on this. I hear this from somebody that says they know economic policy, that I understand never took an economics class. My minor was from here at UK in economics. So when you see a 0.5% cut in your state income tax, you expect to see a comparable reduction in your receipts. That's not happening. It's actually, we're growing our base. That's our purpose, is to grow the base. So we don't have the 200 people in this room paying taxes. We have 400 people in this room paying taxes. And so you're seeing growth in our income tax receipts, even though we're cutting it because we're growing the base. That's good economic policy. And anytime you read that we're cutting our base into oblivion, guess what? Monday afternoon, the receipts report will come out from the state, and it will show you that month to month, year to year, our receipts are growing, even though we're cutting our rent.
Come to find out, when you don't take money out of somebody's pocket before they ever have a chance to spend it, they're going to spend it locally with their local economy, and it's going to turn over again and again and again. Everybody likes to talk about a 7-to-1 return on local spending, and we've seen that, and that's why now, sales tax receipts has almost surpassed, or we have surpassed, income tax receipts. And that's because when Frankfurt isn't taking money out of somebody's pocket to waste it on programs throughout the state, we're turning that over locally, and we're seeing a return on that in our tax receipts. And that's why the budget has grown from $15 billion to $15.5 and now $16 billion.
Fantastic, thank you all. We kind of danced, or not necessarily danced around, we kind of addressed it right there onto my kind of favorite topic of housing and housing affordability. Obviously, it remains a huge issue kind of throughout the state. We'd like to thank you for the new investments into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and the Residential Housing Trust Fund. We know that that is going to make a huge difference on both of these issues. Senate Bill 9 didn't quite get over the kind of goal line on this kind of run. It definitely had a few different tools that were there. Could you all share your perspectives of kind of the housing policy in this session and kind of moving forward into 2027? Anybody?
I'll take off. Look, when you get down towards the end of the session, there's a lot of maneuvering, to say the least. And so some things were attached to it, and it became a little bit more difficult to comprehend what was going on. But don't judge the legislature just by that bill, because there was a lot of other things. And I know I saw Luther Deaton here earlier, I'm not sure he left, but there was a lot of things that we did, like last year with the Transylvania project, but we did some in Louisville and other places, like the Fourth and Oak project in Louisville. We did some things to create opportunity where you had brownfields mitigation issues to make sure they were developable by once the release was done by the state and the federal government, that the original person didn't have liability. So those pieces of property could be developed for the purpose of housing. So there's a lot of other things out there that were done other than House Bill 9, or Senate Bill 9, that impacted in a positive way the housing shortage. And I'm going to go to this, and Amanda and I talked about this, and we did this at the very end of the session when we did the aviation fuels, the alternative aviation fuels. We did what was called the Urban Core Revitalization Tax Incentives. That will allow structures that are over 10 stories high or over 250,000 feet to be renovated in urban cores. Well, that applies to 3 places. One of them is here. And there's actually 2 buildings we looked at that it impacts. What do you have to do? Well, to get those tax credits, you're going to have to go back in and refurbish that building to have 2 or 3 uses. 1, retail. So you want grocery stores in urban cores. 2, commercial, places where you can work. But 3, residential. So you think about how that works in Lexington, Louisville, and northern Kentucky, where we have defined urban cores, and a lot of people didn't know about that impacting the housing issues. So it wasn't just one bill. There's a lot of processes, and when people start looking at the session as a whole, they need to understand the other pieces of legislation that we passed. that really impact the housing issues.
And Robert's right, we did a lot of things that benefited housing throughout the session. Senate Bill 9 was one that, it's a complicated bill by the time it was all said and done with everything that was in it. And but it got us started down the path. You can make every piece of legislation better. Doesn't matter what you pass, you can always make a piece of legislation better. You get, once it's passed and it's implemented in the law, you'll see the benefits and then the negativities about that bill and come back in the next year and fix things. But we got a good conversation going. Robbie Mills in the Senate did a terrific job with that bill. It's an important issue for us, I think in both chambers, but especially in the House. It's one of our priorities. I think that you saw that at the end of session. If you paid any attention on the conference committee, the speaker and I both were on that conference committee. That's how important it was to us to try to get done. But I think we made good progress on it. We worked well with the Senate, and Robbie did, like I said, did a fantastic job in conference committee as well to get some language in there. And there's just some issues that we're going to have to work through, I think. But I think we will get there before it's over with, and I think next year you'll see a very robust package of housing, and we'll get some things done.
That's wonderful. And also, I think everybody in this room very much would like to thank you for last year's kind of support of the transient housing project. It truly has an opportunity to kind of kickstart something very special throughout this Commonwealth. One of the other kind of main areas for Commerce Lexington has always been talent attraction and retention. You all funded a new talent program this year. First of all, thank you for that. But what are you hoping this program will achieve, and how can regions like Greater Lexington really take advantage of this new program?
Sure, I'll start. I think it's an exciting program, and one of the things we've talked about often is what a great place Lexington to Kentucky is to live. We have a phenomenal quality of life, phenomenal quality place, and quite frankly, you know, for everybody who works remotely, why wouldn't you want to live here? And especially with the airport being right around the corner, and it's not Cincinnati, no offense to my friends, but you know, Cincinnati and Louisville are pretty big airports. It's way easier to get in and out of Lexington's airport. The more we add more flights, the easier it will be for people to do remote working, quality of deciding where they want to live and have a business or do consulting. It's here. I know more and more people in that space all the time. So actually, I think the combination of advertising for bringing talent here, once we even have more areas and more flights to get out of, I think it's going to be a great combination. I also think we are geographically uniquely situated where we have Red River Gorge, we have hiking an hour away. You can be in Cincinnati and Louisville for the things we don't have here in Lexington. And so I think we're a phenomenally, I don't know why you would want to live here, to be honest, outside the traffic. I'll be the first one to say. Outside of that, this is a great place to be. And so I think the more we market the whole state in that area, we have a really unique package for quality, for young professionals. Quite frankly, I think.
Taking a lot of meetings with you all on this particular issue, and thank you all so much for your advocacy. I do think this goes hand in hand with kind of our policy goal of growing Kentucky's population, but doing it in a way where we're attracting the people that we want. You know, we want high-earning, highly educated workers to come into Kentucky, and my hope is that's what this targets. And so we can start growing our population, growing the tax base, and through this program. So I was happy to see it in there. I know Senator Wilson has been a big champion for this for years. But the devil's in the details. We need to make sure that the program's executed in the way that we can get data back to make sure that the investment is worth taxpayer resources.
I want to touch on this a little bit because I think, or Mike Wilson from Bowling Green, they have 6,500 unfilled jobs. That's a lot, so they're looking for talent recruitment. Well, I'm from the Deep East, and we've been catastrophically and adversely impacted by the change in philosophy of fossil fuels. Just to be real. I'm not arguing global warming or decarbonization, anything like that. It's just reality. So we started 2 years ago with shaping our Appalachian region, SOAR, which was started by then Governor Steve Beshear and Congressman Al Rogers. We did a pilot program called Remote Worker Recruitment because we don't have the jobs. We want to recruit people there. We earmarked $1.5 million to work with a marketing group. And over that period of time, they have brought in about 82 new people. Average household, average individual, target individual income, $93,000 per person working remotely. Average household income, $136,000. Additionally, 2 children in the school system, which when you think about the SEEK allotment is generally about $4,000 per student per school system, which means that brings a lot of influx. That program was really successful, and so what they were seeing out of 9,000 applications, almost a third of them were for people of skilled labor, not remote workers. So we had that discussion with Mike Wilson and this group, and it said, all right, let's start that type of similar program looking for skilled workers, and that's how it came about that we do this to start not recruiting remote workers where we don't have jobs, but recruiting skilled workers where we need them for the vacancies and the job needs in the respective areas that they are. And hopefully we'll see in 2 years that, hey, you'll bring in 1,500 people that will come here to fill those jobs that are needed.
That certainly leads into kind of one of Commerce Lexington's next buckets with regards to economic development. The Kentucky Production Development Initiative has leveraged significant private investment during the program's 4 years in existence. It is a significant win to have $50 million in continued funding for this program over the next 2 years. How do you see these type of continued investments in job-ready sites shaping Kentucky's ability to compete for major economic development projects?
So KPDI is something I've had a lot of, spent a lot of time in working to develop. And Representative Bowling, it was his bill a few years back, and we've seen several iterations of it, and it's evolved. And really, it's finally gotten Kentucky at least competitive with some of our surrounding states. We hadn't really ever made this type of investment before in these local sites. One of the things that I'm really excited about is having watched the program evolve and watching how the applications have changed. We're now to a point to where we're starting to do due diligence and we're starting to finish a lot of these bigger sites. And it truly has made Kentucky a lot more competitive. So when the governor's out touting how much he's grown the economy, it's because of programs like KPDI where we make investments in rural communities, or like the Triple Crown site in Madison County. In sites like that where we know where growth is going to happen. One of the things I'm really excited about, it was one of the last bills we passed, was House Bill 869, and that changed how we are going to do incentive programs for economic development in the future. We're kind of dipping our toes into refundable sales tax credits. As the individual income tax goes down, Kentucky's incentive packages have gone down because of that. And so we're looking at how can we supplement those, and then how can we make investments in rural communities, because there are places throughout the Commonwealth where 20, 25 jobs would make a huge difference. And so being able to provide enhanced incentives in some of these communities, really proud of the work that went into that. I think it's going to have a huge impact going forward.
I'm going to add just one comment. When you're recruiting, it's all about speed to market. And if you can't sit there and say, we've done the geotech, we know this has got a good subsurface to do a 4, 8, or 10-inch pour of concrete, and we've got it local or located near the appropriate infrastructure, whatever it may be. And that's what this KDPI does, is make sure that it is the appropriate subsurface infrastructure is there. If you go to somebody and you say, well, we're willing to move to Kentucky, you got a great tax rate, you got everything going, but where can we build? We don't know. You've lost. So it is all about speed to market. First one that can satisfy their needs and demands.
Robert's exactly right. And as Josh said, we have the site in Madison County, you have one in Rockcastle County that's being prepared right now. It's a mega site of 1,600 acres, which is what some of these larger companies need. But those two sites are so close together, they will feed off each other. When a large company comes to one of those, feeder companies will come to the other. And so the entire area, the entire region is going to benefit. You have one in Harrisburg, you have one in Western Kentucky, and so when we're able to prepare those sites and get them ready, and those companies see that, like right now what we talked about is one of those mega sites is one of the top 10 in the nation by Site Selection Magazine. So you've got all these foreign companies looking at you as well, car manufacturers and everything. So it's going to benefit us all. But another reason that folks look at Kentucky, especially with us having the site's ready, you're getting gas there, you're getting water there. We have a very adequate water supply in the state of Kentucky. We have low energy costs. All these companies look at those things when they come. The main thing that we need to continue working on right now is just making sure we have the workforce when they come, so that we're prepared.
Absolutely. One last kind of closing question before we get to Slido is, for the folks in this room, local leaders, like, what are the biggest opportunities that you think that got passed this year that we can build on, and how can we help you all as we go into 2027? It's an easy, very pointed question.
I'm gonna go back to the whole thing with the airports. Speed to market, time is money. People want to be places, they want to go to the West Coast. You think about the foreign companies that look here. If we can get direct access to the West Coast, then you'll want more flight to Tokyo, Taipei, Seoul, wherever it may be. So doing this to make sure our 3 airports are as attractive and competitive as possible, to me means that's the step in the future, because people have that desire. They don't want to fly from Lexington to Dallas and then Dallas to wherever and then someplace else and make 5 connections to get to the West Coast. It's not awful to do that. They want a direct flight from San Francisco, Seattle, or San Francisco or LA, and then they know they can get to wherever they are. And we have a global economy. The world's largest Toyota manufacturer is here. I think if you go from here to LA to Tokyo, that's what they look for. That's what the business community looks for. So how we continue to expand and work on the Lexington airport and continue to track that type of direct flight, wherever it may be, international or national flights, I think is probably one of the biggest things we can do in the future. And I think we just started it, and especially with the sustainable aviation fuel, or some people call it alternative aviation fuel.
That's going to be very beneficial as well. Like Covington right now is getting ready to do a flight to Germany. Germany requires the alternative aviation fuel in those jets when they land over there. So they're going to have to use it quite a bit of it. But that one flight, CBG has told us, will produce $130 million worth of economic impacts in northern Kentucky, just that one flight per year. And they will expand to additional flights in Europe once they get started. And with the expansion here in Lexington, hopefully, as Robert said, we can get flights going to the West Coast here, Louisville, and that will be beneficial to us as well. One of the things that we're going to have to continue to work on moving forward, we started this year, is on, as I mentioned earlier, Medicaid reform. We're going to have to continue down that pathway because of the federal government is forcing us that way. The state is going to have an extreme expense later on, especially starting in 2028 with Medicaid. So we've got to continue to reform that to make sure that the program is sustainable and the folks that are getting it actually need to be getting it, and those who don't are coming off of it.
I think I'll just hit on some of the economic development stuff we did. And so you heard us talk about investments through House Bill 900, and enhanced incentives and things like that. But we also passed a KCTCS reform bill. I know you said Dr. Pearl's here, to where we attach somebody from them with economic development and somebody with economic development with KCTCS, so that when they're out pitching Kentucky and these companies are worried about our workforce, we've got KCTCS there prepared to deliver an educated, well-trained workforce. And so we've done a lot of things, individual investments, just different reforms. I'm really, really excited about how all of this stuff is going to play together.
So you asked about the future. The housing conversation is not over, right? We had to put a pause at the end of session. And the goal is to get the best bill we can in the interim. So we walk in January with everybody on the same page of where we're going. So we still need your help. And Lexington was, I think as a region, was very, very diligent in showing up in Frankfurt this session, offering ideas, talking to people, and wanting to be part of the solution. We're going to need that. Land use conversation is the toughest to have in the state, I think. Just because we only have so much land, and we have prime soil, and we have growth, and we have housing, it's difficult to put all those things into one place. So we're going to need help in that area. I get very excited about the space economy, which people don't talk about, but I'll tell you what, when I look at the future of Kentucky in 10 years, I think we'll be talking about the investments we're making in the space, literally in the space economy. And then lastly, this year we did 1.75 in House Bill 900, the one-time gifts. That was $3 billion 2 years ago. So it wasn't what we had done. There was a lot of expectation about what we could do, and it was tough not to be able to meet all the wonderful projects, ideas that we had from this area. And I think I could have easily lifted off a couple $100 million of really good ideas and really good projects that we wanted to see funded. So those conversations, I think, have been good and aren't going away either. You know, as Brady always tells me, we'll be back in 9 months, so.
Thank you all very much. I'm going to hand it over to Bob Quick.
All right.
Handle some audience questions.
So looking up at the Slido board, despite the tremendous advocacy of Senator Bledsoe, Lexington received significantly less in capital projects than Louisville. How can we improve that?
Look, first of all, there are really 4 economic generators in the state. I'm from a donor region. It's reality. We don't generate a lot of income taxes, but we have to look at Lexington, Louisville, Northern Kentucky, and the Bowling Green area. That's where the bulk of our tax receipts come from. 20% of our tax receipts come from Jefferson County. A lot of people don't realize that. That's a lot. So I think the lesson from here, when we go back to the airport, you know, they're a little bit more advanced. But when this capital construction, which the earmark money was for, then you start talking about, because you don't have the gate space and revenue guarantees are really kind of difficult. And I know Brian's here somewhere, and we talk about that. Well, you got to get that done, and then we're ready to start adding more flights. So there's certain things that have been accomplished just because of the age of the infrastructure and the population mass that are there. So it's a matter of preparing and I'm using the airports as an example, preparing that for the future. And that's the capital construction component. When the capital construction component is completed, then we start talking about revenue guarantees. The other part of that is there, again, because of that, I'm not sure, and I want to kind of digress a little bit, this whole thing about aerospace, a lot of people don't realize the aerospace impact between here and Space Tango, and nobody really promoted that to us until Space Tango came to us. But guess what Space Tango does? It puts 5 different experiments on the International Space Station from a lady named Paula Grisanti and the National Stem Cell Foundation that's going to look at stem cell growth and tissue regeneration in a weightless environment and also an environment that has different radiation impacts. So again, thinking about the networks of how they play together, and then going up the road to Moorhead, there's nobody that has a bigger NASA connection in this state than Moorhead State University. So how does it all come together in the networks to make things work? And then when you come with that type of a vision, then you get response from us, as you saw this session, in that type of infrastructure investment.
We're becoming aggressive, more aggressive. Thank you. Good answer. What actions will you support to make daycare and early childhood education more affordable for families, especially working parents facing rising costs?
I think you've seen that that's something we've been trying to work on the past couple of budget cycles. The budget cycle before, we passed the child care employee credit, which was a match. It was a grant program, it was 50% match for those who wanted to partner in that, to partner with a local child care or one in their own company. The issue that comes up is that there's so much bureaucracy, there's so much red tape with the child care industry that we're really trying to dive into it to start cutting that, to make sure that folks can open up new child care facilities. Also that employers can do something as well there if they would like to. That is something that we started working on this year. We had House Bill 6, was that what it was? And that helps to eliminate some of that red tape for child care facilities that are already operating and those that are wanting to expand. But also we did initial investments and tried to make it easier also in that child care grant program that we have as well. So we tried to double down on that. But you'll probably see us come back in the next year or so and start looking at some of the restrictions and regulations that we can work on to try to make it easier.
I think we have time for one more question here. Do you think there will be any opportunities for capital or one-time spending during the short session in 2027?
limited.
But always the possibility, and I was here when we changed the Constitution in 2000, to go to annual sessions, and hopefully we don't file 1,500 bills this year. We need to do the short sessions for what the short sessions were perceived to be. Look at a dozen or 25 big issue problems. Some of them may be fiscal problems, some may be substantive logistics problems, and narrow our focus to those big issues instead of dabbling around. And both chambers did it. I mean, you know, we had the state dog and the state mushroom, but that's important to some people because it's great to their areas and it's something they can take with a sense of pride. But let's do what we expected to do when our Constitution was changed and take those 10, 20, 25 big issues and focus on those. Generally, when you get into that, you're probably going to talk about some fiscal realities.
Never say never, but generally we don't try to open the budget up. We generally don't try to tap into the budget reserve trust fund, but we always do.
I'll go back to 2015. Probably one of the largest times we ever opened up the budget in an off year was when we did the $135 million for the University of Kentucky Research Facility. So we had the money. We failed to do that. Sorry for all the lawyers. We funded the law school instead of a research facility. I'm a lawyer, so we don't need more lawyers. We need more doctors and researchers and try to figure out how we get rid of our poor healthcare indices. But we came back in 15 and opened it up. We put up half the money, UK did the other half, and we did this $270 million research facility that eventually led the UK getting the NIH designation to be a cancer research center that now has become a comprehensive cancer research center.
All right, let's give a round of applause to Nick Dickerson and our panel. We appreciate everything you do to make our region stronger and better. And I would just say this, when we talk about why are we more successful, I get to talk to my colleagues all over the country periodically, and we take it for granted how we work together, how we're getting better and have bigger vision. And a lot of people are following us now because they see what's coming out and the success that we're having. We just always have to think big, act big, be inclusive, and perform. And we can do it because that's who we are. I want to thank all of you very much for being here. WealthSouth, thank you very much. And please, elected officials, if you'd stay around for some pictures, that would be terrific. And again, the last thing I want to say is thank you for being phenomenally helpful for us to grow and to make this a much greater community and region. Thank you.